Hello, 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 and welcome to the project section of the JavaScript if statements week in Intro to Creative Web Dev. So you hopefully just read through a tutorial or watched through a video that introduced the idea of using if statements in JavaScript, and that's building on some knowledge that you already had from P5 all the way back in week 4. And so now you're going to practice the concept of using if statements in JavaScript by building a project. This week's project is to create a quiz. So you know how to get input in JavaScript, and now you're going to check that input against some predefined answers that you come up with to make an interactive quiz. It's totally up to you what that quiz is about. It can be funny or serious or realistic. It can be about you or something random, or it's all good. Um, I will be looking at the code more than the actual content. Okay, so the requirement is to have 10 if, else if, or else statements. You can have as many inputs in your HTML as you want, but the thing I'm going to be counting is your if, else if, or else statements. So in this video, I'm going to kind of walk through how I would approach that, and I encourage you to approach it in the same way. Okay, so I have some starter code here that you can take as an example where I have 2 questions in my quiz, and then I have a submit button which calls this function and gets the element for the answers that the user provided, and then gets the value from that element, and then checks that value against some predefined values, and then does something based on that. So feel free to take a look at that code if that would be helpful, but I think I am just going to go to Replit and kind of start from scratch. Okay, so I'm going to create a new HTML, CSS, JS Replit, and I'm going to call it if statements project, maybe. You can choose whatever name you want. It doesn't matter, but I'm going to call it if statements project. Could call it quiz, maybe, something like that, but that's what I'm going to call it. All right, so in my index.html file, I sort of hate the starter code that Replit gives you, so I'm going to get rid of most of it, and I'm going to move the script.js line up into the head section just to kind of get it out of the way. Okay, so I'm going to run that, and I have my hello world, beautiful, amazing, wonderful. So now from here, I want to start creating a quiz, and I recommend doing it like one question at a time. So I'm going to start with a question. I should have thought of this ahead of time. I didn't. So I will maybe start a question with like, what's my favorite holiday? I don't know. Maybe this quiz is about me and getting to know me, and it's going to be very self-centered, but that's okay. So I can maybe just run this just to make sure that my HTML is working. It looks like it is. So next I'm going to need an input with an ID of something. It can be anything I want, but I'm going to call it like holiday answer, or maybe I can just call it holiday. Let's call it holiday answer. And I think that's it. And let's run this, see what happens. And okay, I've got my input. Okay, so I have HTML that says, what's my favorite holiday? And then an input. And next I need a button. And I'll just make the text of that button like submit. And okay, that's going to show up on the same line. So I could use CSS to like place that or use Flexbox or something. But just to get something working, I'll use a couple of new lines. Okay, so now I have what's my favorite holiday. I have an input and I have a submit button. Right now the submit button doesn't do anything, and that's okay. I'm going to change that in a second. So I'm going to say onClick equals, and maybe I'll just call a submit function. Again, you can call that function whatever you want, but now that I have the onClick attribute calling the submit function, I actually need a submit function. So I'm going to go over to my script.js file, and I'm going to type function submit. And I'm going to give myself some white space. And okay, now in here, I can write JavaScript that gets the answer from this input and then does something based on the answer. So first I'll say, create a variable. Maybe I'll say let holiday equals document.get element by ID. And what should I call this? This thing. I called it nothing. Oh, no, I called it holiday answer. Here it is. Holiday answer. Script.js, holiday answer. Okay. So I'm going to call this maybe holiday element. Maybe I'll split this up. So let holiday element equals document.get element by ID holiday answer. So that gives me the element. I actually need the value of that element, the value inside that element that the user types. So I'll say let holiday equals holiday element dot value. Okay. So I can run this. Nothing's really going to happen because I'm not actually doing anything with this input. So maybe next I'll do something with the input. Maybe I'll have an output element somewhere. Maybe I'll have it underneath my my input, and I'll say PID equals holiday output. Again, you can call this stuff whatever you want. So don't feel beholden to my naming conventions, but I'm going to call it holiday output. So I have a p tag now that has an ID of holiday output. So back in my script.js file, I can write JavaScript that gets the element. So it's going to be very similar to this line of code. So I might just straight up steal it. And I'll say let holiday answer, or not answer, result, or output element, I guess. Holiday output. Okay. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Okay. And now maybe just to get something working, I'll say holiday output element dot element. That's not how you spell element. Element dot inner text equals holiday. Just to get something working, just to make sure that my code is working how I expect it to. So I'm going to run. I'm going to say what's my favorite holiday. I'm going to say test. I'm going to submit, and I see test here. Cool. I can double check. Are there any errors in my JavaScript console? Only yellow ones, which I can generally ignore. And this one, I think, is a bug in Replit itself. So I'll ignore all of that. Looks like there's nothing super obvious in my code going wrong, so I'll keep trucking. All right, so now I have my holiday input that the user has entered, and I have my holiday output element, which right now I'm just appending the holiday itself to. But what this lets me do is write an if statement that says, like, if holiday equals Halloween, then I can say, I can steal this line of code and I can say holiday output element dot inner text equals, and I'm going to say something else like correct. And you know what? Maybe I'll add an emoji. Okay, so this code here now takes the holiday, which the user has entered into this input element, and compares it to the predefined value of Halloween. It's my favorite holiday. And so I'm going to run this, and I'm going to say, what's my favorite holiday? New Year's. And if I hit submit, right now, nothing happens. And that's what I want because my if statement only checks against Halloween. Okay, cool. So if I type in Halloween here, then hit submit, now you see correct. Cool. So from here, I can proceed in a couple different ways. I could add like maybe a couple else if statements here, maybe at least an else. So I'll say else, and otherwise I want to like say like wrong, maybe. Wrong. You know, you can get more creative with the stuff that you actually show, but just to get something working, I want to say, what's my favorite holiday? I don't know, Flag Day. Submit, wrong. And this is like two statements, if and else, that now take the input of this element and show something based on whether the value is like correct or not. Correctness is up to you. In my case, I'm comparing it to Halloween. You can ask a different question, expect different answers, do different things, but the idea is that you're adding if and else if statements. So for example, maybe I add like a hint or something. So I say like else if holiday equals like, I don't know, Christmas, let's go with, then I will do something special here. I'll say, instead of saying wrong, I'll say hint my favorite holiday is in October. And otherwise, then I'll still say wrong. So now my if statements here, they say if the holiday is Halloween, then I will output correct. Otherwise, if the holiday was Christmas, then I'll say give the user a little hint. And otherwise, I'll just say that they're wrong. So what's my favorite holiday? If I type July 4th and I hit submit, that's wrong. Okay. If I type Christmas, then I hit submit, then I get the hint. Hint, my favorite holiday is in October. And now if I type Halloween and hit submit, that's correct. Cool. So from here, you can do a few different things. You can maybe add a few, cases here. So instead of just comparing Halloween and Christmas, maybe you throw in Valentine's Day there as well, and maybe depending on your feeling about Valentine's Day, maybe you put different messages in there. The other thing you might do is add additional questions. So I encourage you to come up with as many questions as you feel like. And to do that, I'm going to follow a very similar pattern. So I'm going to have like this trifecta of sorts of like a question and then an input and then like an output. So I'm just going to copy paste it. And I'll say, instead of what's my favorite holiday, maybe I'll say like, what's my favorite animal, maybe. And I want to change this ID to animal answer, and I'll say animal output here. And so far I've changed my HTML, so now I should expect, another layer here, another question here. And the stuff I've added, nothing changes this, nothing takes the input from that. There's no JavaScript yet, but my first question should still work. So just to check that, I'm going to maybe type nonsense and say wrong. Okay, cool. And maybe I'll type in Halloween, and that still works. Okay, so now I'm going to proceed with the JavaScript of my second question. So I could do something really similar, and maybe I will steal some of this code. I'll just steal these first few lines of code because those will be really similar. And now I want like animal element equals document.get element by ID, animal answer, let animal equals animal element dot value. So I'm getting the value of this input now. And next I need to get the output element, which is kind of this hidden p tag there. Animal output element equals document.get element by ID, animal output. Okay. So it's kind of a lot of code, a lot of copy pasting, but what I have done, hopefully, is now in addition to this input, now I'm getting the value from this input as well. And next, maybe I'll just to test, I'll just get the input directly in the output. So maybe I'll say animal output element dot inner text equals animal. I'll run this, and it doesn't really matter what I type in the top one because I don't care right now. I'm just getting something working. So I'm going to type testing in all caps just to get my test here. Okay, so I see wrong. That's for my first answer. I don't really care. So what's my favorite animal? Testing. And right now, I just output the input directly on the page. So now I can kind of proceed from here, maybe add an if statement and say if animal equals cat, then I'll say animal output element dot inner text equals right, meow, I don't know, something goofy. And otherwise, I'll just say wrong. I could maybe expand this to have a hint or something, but for now I'll just say wrong. Because the point is not so much what I'm showing, the point is like how I'm getting there. So if I save that, auto format, cool. And now I think I should have two questions that formulate my quiz. So what's my favorite holiday? I'll just type New Year's Eve. And what's my favorite animal? I'm going to type dog. And I'm going to click submit. And now I see that both of my answers are wrong. So I can maybe guess again. And maybe this time I say Christmas. And this one I say cat. Click submit. Okay, cool. So now I see that my first answer the result of my first answer gives me a hint and says, hint, my favorite holiday is in October. So, okay, maybe I know that it's Halloween now. Halloween. And here I got it right, so I don't need to change anything. Cool. And I should do that one more time, and now I get correct and right, meow. And I think we're going to stop there because what I have so far is 2 questions, and the pattern is you get the input from the user, then you check that input against some other values that you come up with, and you provide some output to the page based on the result of those if statements. And so far, what do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if, else if, or else statements. So you would follow that pattern to come up with 5 more and get a total of 10 for full credit. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there. I already talked about like styling stuff in JavaScript in the last video and in the last project video actually. So I don't think I'll do that again here, but I encourage you to get creative. I'm not grading on styling or anything, but if you want to play around with showing different things or maybe putting images up, all of that can be really fun, and I encourage you to kind of explore that space. But what I'm looking for when I'm grading is I'm going to go pretty much straight to your script.js file and count your if, else if, and else statements. So as long as you have 10 of those, we are golden. All right. As always, I love seeing what you all come up with. So I'm excited to see all of your quizzes, whether they're about yourselves or about random stuff out in the world or things you care about. I always love seeing the different projects. So can't wait. Hope you have fun with this one. Let me know as you have questions or get stuck on something. And otherwise, I will see you in class.